Devanshi, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
देवांशी, तुमने कुछ दिन पहले वो प्रॉब्लम साइट करी थी, क्या थी वो? कोई क्लास नहीं तुम्हारी, क्या हो रहा था?
सर कौन सी वाली?
कुछ बताया था तुमने। मुझे
सर
आजकल याद कम रहने लग गए।
सर रिलेटेड टू पीपीटी।
हाँ ठीक है, याद आ गया बस।
यस
आज किसकी है प्रेजेंटेशन?
Sir, mine.
Sir, and mine.
माइन कौन बोला पहले? अधीश की और किसकी है?
Manaswini.
ओके ओके। So who is about to start? Manaswini, you will start, or Adhish, you will start?
So would it be fine if I started?
Manaswini, you want to?
Yes, sir.
Okay, share your presentation and turn on your camera.
Sir, just a moment, it's loading.
मनस्विनी, कर सकते हो शुरू तुम?
Yes, sir, just 1 minute. I'm facing a few
Okay.
technical issues. I'm just trying to upload it. Just give me 1 minute.
No issues.
Sir, I seem to be facing some problems. So would it be fine if Adish could go first? By then I can fix the issue on my end, if it's okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's okay.
Thank you so much.
Sir, am I visible and audible?
Yeah, you were visible and clearly audible.
Okay, sir. So is it visible?
Now it is. Okay. Yes.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My topic for today's presentation is organic composting. Compost is the natural decomposition process which occurs in soil and which is done in a controlled manner and which can be regulated by humans. Organic matter is what usually happens is organic matter is collected, preferably stacked in a heap. And in the heap, the decomposition processes occurs rather fastly because the conditions are much more favorable. And the end product we get is usually just strongly decayed organic matter with humus and nutrients, which is known as compost. Compost is used as an organic fertilizer and can be added to the soil. The fundamentals of compost is at the simplest level, composting requires gathering a mix of greens and browns. Greens are materials which are rich in nitrogen, such as leaves, grass, and food scraps. Browns are much more woody materials that are rich in carbon, such as stalks, paper, wood, cardboard. Composting is an aerobic method of decomposing organic solid waste. Therefore, it can be used to recycle organic material. Composting, usually the four important ingredients to make the most efficient compost is the presence of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and water. Carbon for energy. The microbial oxidation of carbon produces the heat, which is very crucial for the compost. And high carbon materials tend to be brown and dry. Nitrogen to grow and reproduce more organisms in order to oxidize the carbon. High nitrogenous material tend to be green and wet. They can be they include all the colorful fruits and vegetables they put. And oxygen required if it's an aerobic process. However, the overall percentage should be less than 5% to perform the processes efficiently. And compost goes synonymous with moisture content because if the compost goes dry, then it's just almost destroyed in mid-process. There are certain issues of these materials which will allow the microorganisms to work at a rate that will heat up the compost pile. Active management of the pile, which is like turning the pile regularly, is needed to maintain the sufficient oxygen and the right moisture level. Air and water balance is critical. We have to maintain temperature which it can be it is an exothermic process. It can get high of like up to 54 to 71 degrees Celsius. And it's at that point where many of the organic materials are broken down. And so basically hot container composting focuses on retaining heat in order to increase the decomposition rate, thus producing compost much more quickly. It's the most efficient with the carbon nitrogen ratio is of 25:1. And rapid composting is favored by having we should keep the carbon nitrogen ratio up to 30 or less. Above 30 and the nitrogen is out. Below 15, the outgas is like we'll get ammonia and it will start smelling bad. Okay, there are many different practices of composting, and there are the traditional methods, they like open air composting or direct in-ground composting by covering it up. And much more recent forms of composting, we have the tumbler composting, which is a form of hot composting. Then we have vermicomposting. We have EMO composting, which favors much more bacterial composting, like you keep it in a bin and you allow microorganisms to do the job. Then you simply go and dump that thing in your garden. The benefit of EMO composting is that we get a liquid fertilizer. Actually, the picture you are seeing right now, which is written in trust bin, this is the compost which I keep in my home. And so the tap you are seeing here bottom, there is a separation in between, which here we put all our wastes. And before putting our waste, I put some jaggery for the microbes. Then we there is we put.
He's corrected. You were saying that you initiated at your home.
Yes, sir. So this picture, which is written trust bin, it's in my home.
The trust bin. Okay, fine.
Yes.
Good.
And at the end product, what we get is the compost on top and liquid fertilizer on bottom, which is very concentrated, and I dilute it and spray it to the plants. Then we have the combination composting, which is like including all of the above processes. And we have the large scale mechanical composting, which uses grinders and big machinery to break down the parts in order to fasten the process. I found an article which kind of answered my question, which I asked time ago. Bioremediation of heavy metals and organic toxins by composting. It's like removal of heavy metals and recalcitrant compounds through composting. And so what they studied was like a lot of hazardous organic materials which are used widely in many fields of life, like in domestic, in municipal, agricultural, industrial, and in military activities also. From agriculture and home, what happened, pesticides which are used in the crops, the crop residues in municipal sludges. And these usually lead to create an optimum condition for growth of insect diseases and many more weeds to grow. So this destroys your compost, and the metallic contaminants in organic materials and in the land arise from pesticides, from farm manures, and major inputs of metals into the environment also occur from this municipal and industrial sludges. So what basically happened is the poultry farm and the pigs, when they're fed with their feed, in that trace elements of metals remain, which are essential for them, which serves as a micronutrient for the animals. But later, due to improper disposal of those feed, the soil are contaminated, and a lot of a lot of metallic and inorganic contaminants are contaminated with the soil, basically. So what they do is they use composting as a form of bioremediation, and they basically degrade the toxic organic compounds, not completely, but it lessens the toxicity of metallic contaminants.
Partially to some extent.
Okay. Yes, sir. And it basically removes their bioavailability in order to, and it replaces the mineral counterpart with mineral compounds with the organic counterparts, which is much less toxic. And composting has been practiced to, so it has been used to reduce volume and water content of feedstock, to destroy pathogens and destroy odor producing nitrogen sulfurous compounds. So modern pesticides, insecticides, and many fungicides are which are mostly organic compounds, are subject to biological decomposition. And these pesticides over the years can persist on the soil, and sometimes the lack of sufficient readily decomposable organic material in the soil gives inadequate substrate to stimulate the microorganisms in order to start decomposing these metallic compounds. For example, simazine remained in the soil for 4 years after application, and carbofurans were much more labile than simazine, but residual carbofuran that had become bound to the soil was much more recalcitrant to degradation than the original form. So, and also, unfortunately, tillage practices did not affect the dissipation of the herbicides in the farmland. Once it's there, it's on for some years. The only way to lessen the loss is through vigorous biological activity during composition, and which can be used to accelerate the this decomposition to treat the pesticide contaminated materials. Metallic contaminants may enter compost from farm manure, sewage sludges, and unlike organic contaminants, metallic contaminants in feedstock are not lessened quantitatively during composting. However, the bioavailability of these contaminants are lessened. Recalcitrant materials such as organochlorines may not undergo degradation in compost or in soils, and the effects of forming organic complex with the metallic pollutants may be non-permanent or short-lived. The general conclusion is, however, that compost degrades or binds the pollutants to innocuous levels, so it has the potential of remediation of polluted materials. Thank you.
Adhish, the paper component was good, but could you give more details about the practice that you have done at your home?
Yes, sir.
I remember in one of your class you inquired that, sir, can we have the compost at the backyard? I remember
yes,
it. You were inquisitive about it.
Yes, sir. So actually, what during that time I meant was in a large scale, like in a pile as a yard. But since I live in an apartment, we have a garden, but and my mother is in charge of the gardening there. So what we used to do is we have kept a bin, 2-3 containers like the one I showed you. There are three more like that, and we put all our. So I'm a vegetarian, so we do not have any meat waste or any eggshells. So we keep all our fruits and vegetable piles in that, and we mix some cocoa peat during the early days. Before setting up all those piles, there is a separation in at the bottom, which keeps like almost of this much of distance, and there I put a jaggery to act as form the sugar for the basically microbes, and
A rich carbon source.
Yes, sir. And we separate that off with a container with a strainer type of plastic and 2-3 newspapers, and then we put all the vegetable peels and waste in that, and we seal it off. That stays there for 2-3 weeks, and when I opened it, I saw many fungi, and it kind of smelled like a cow shed, like those pure village cow dung smell. It's not that offensive, but and Also, after 2-3 weeks, what you will get is the fertilizer, the decomposition has the garbage is decomposed, and all there is a liquid fertilizer dropping in between the from the stored at the bottom, and you can collect that in a bottle, which is basically a mixture of other nutrients and jaggery.
So
You put that in. You put some dilute 2-3 drops in water in a 1 liter or 2 liter bottle. Then you can spray it.
and could you share the results? The results that you have sprayed, and is there
Yes,
any
sir. Yes, sir. So so we in our it's kept in a balcony, and I have planted many plants there. Some vegetables, some flowering plants. Tulsi plant is also there, but I do not spray this fertilizer in Tulsi. But the other plants, they were initially my mother told me to spray it in the soil first, but I tried spraying it in the leaves. But all the leaves were turned like very fresh and green, and they look much more plump. So it had a very positive effect. Positive, yes, sir.
We'll get back to you, Adhish, in a near time soon. Actually, we come to know about that there is a place in Noida itself, in Noida Extension, that there is a guy who is practicing this organic composting and mushroom cultivation, not both of them together. He has a vermicompost unit also. So I tried to come in contact with him, and we actually want to visit that place. And in order to make you people acquaint with the physical site, that what site is there, I mean what kind of things they are practicing, in order to have a more uh, practical analysis of the thing that you actually have been into. So we'll get back
Yes.
to you definitely. And definitely
Sure,
one
sir.
thing more, Adish, try to share the pictures of the composting material of the compost that you've prepared and the after effects, if some of them they
Okay,
are
sir.
there.
Okay, sir.
Definitely, it will be a good thing for all of your classmates. It will be a good example to lead. Good work, Adish. I appreciate it. Really good work.
Thank you, sir.
So, okay, Adish. Next is Manaswini.
Yes, sir. I'm just uploading mine.
Okay. So by the time Manaswini uploads it, so guys, it was a good work by Adish has done. I'm in practically just with an example, because his mother is into this gardening thing, and uh, he actually took up the lead in order to have compost ready, and randomly he picked up the things because he was saying that his diet is not a non-vegetarian but a veg. So he added up the things and put some jaggery in order to have a rich carbon source. So carbon is actually, I mean, jaggery serves as a good, because sugar is there and it will help for various kind of microorganisms to grow. I mean, I have read somewhere that jaggery has been used as a composting material. So it was a good part from Adish. So um,
Yes, sir. Sir, and also we were taught about this last sem through Nandlal, sir. Taught us.
okay, okay. So that is a good part. Fine, fine, Adish. Okay, Manaswini, mushroom cultivation. We can see your slides. You can start.
Okay, sir. So, a very good morning. Today, I'm going to be giving a presentation on mushroom cultivation. So, in this presentation, I'll be giving a brief introduction on what mushroom cultivation is, but I will be focusing a little more on the research paper that I've chosen, which is um, mushroom cultivation of one particular mushroom. And I've also given some background on that mushroom. So, with that, let's begin. So, first of all, let me give a brief introduction to mushroom cultivation. So, it is the process of growing mushrooms for any industrial or commercial purpose. Why is this important? Because as of today, the mushroom industry is valued at 60 billion US dollars globally. So, definitely, mushroom cultivation does have a big impact on global economy. Apart from that, it has a very, very high nutritive value. I'm talking about the edible mushrooms only. They have a very high nutritive value, and they are a great option for vegans who have to look for other sources of protein and nutrients. Mushrooms offer that as a great diet choice. So there are basically three types of mushrooms. We've got edible, medicinal, and wild. Edible mushrooms are, like I've mentioned in the picture here, the most commonly cultivated one is Agaricus bisporus, and it is the mushroom that I'm sure all of us have mostly eaten. It's the button mushroom. Other edible mushrooms are portobello and shiitake mushrooms as well. Medicinal mushrooms, they are mostly sold in powdered forms, and they have a very, very good impact on the immune system. And some of them can even fiercely fight cancer cells. Majority of the mushrooms are wild mushrooms, which means that they are present in the wild, and that proper research on them has not been fully done yet. So that basically is an unknown area which technically could hold potential for more edible or medicinal mushrooms as well, since only so far only 3% of the wild mushrooms are actually poisonous as far as we know. So more research does need to happen. Now, mushrooms, they can be grown in, for an industry, but they also can be grown in someone's home or in their garden. But the thing is that they do have a few, they require slightly different growth conditions. So if you are somebody who is growing at your home, then those conditions have to be met. So with that, let me give a bit of the background into the paper that I'm going to be presenting. So the paper that I'm going to be presenting is on oyster mushrooms, also known as Pleurotus ostreatus. So this mushroom is also known as oyster mushroom because, as you can see, it looks like an oyster, and surprisingly, it also tastes like one. And it is native to Germany, but today it is cultivated in several regions of the United States and Asia. It belongs to the family Pleurotaceae. Now, they have a very important nutritive value in the diet because they have very high amounts of dietary fiber, protein, vitamin B12, negligible amounts of fat, and almost no cholesterol. So they can also be recommended to patients who have a risk of heart disease because they do have a very high nutritive value with a lesser amount of fat value. And like all organisms, of course, oyster mushrooms also have optimal growth conditions. These are the fact that they grow best in either malt extract agar or potato dextrose agar, and they grow best at a temperature of around 25 degrees Celsius and a pH of around 7. So with that, I'm going to move on to the paper. I could not fully add an image of the paper, so I have, however, included the DOI. So if there's anyone who wants to look at the entire research paper, it is available online. It was quite interesting and very easy to understand on my part. So the title of my paper is Growth and Yield Performance of Pleurotus ostreatus on Different Substrates. I will be explaining this. So this was a study that was conducted in Ethiopia because Ethiopia is a place where there is not that much knowledge on mushroom cultivation. So it was conducted in the Wando Genet College, and their results were published in 2016. So basically, what the study wanted to do was it wanted to see the efficacy of different substrates in mushroom cultivation. So before I continue, what is a substrate? A substrate is basically any substance that you can add to a mushroom culture or a place where the mushroom is growing, and it enhances and improves the growth and yield of the mushroom. It's important to note that the substrate is not necessary or essential, but it definitely does have its benefits, and the benefits are good enough to actually want the researchers for the researchers to actually want to use it. So the four substrates which were used for this study were cottonseed, paper waste, wheat straw, and sawdust. Why these four substrates were chosen will be I will be explaining towards the end of the presentation. So with that, let's move on to the method and the materials that were used. So the four substrates were collected from different places based on the requirements. And I have taken their entire experiment and categorized it into 5 stages to make it easier to understand. So with that, let's look at each stage systematically. So first, we've got pure culture preparation and production. So the mushroom culture, it had to be grown on the malt extract agar for 7 days. Why 7 days? Because this is how long it took for the mycelia to properly grow and invade the agar. So when mycelia invades the agar, as in fully spreads and mycelia running is fully done, only then we know that the culture is ready for further experimentation. So again, as you can see, it was incubated at 25 degrees Celsius because that is the optimal temperature for this particular mushroom. After that, once the culture was prepared, they also had to prepare something called grain spawn. So this is again a new term. So I'll explain what spawn is as well. So in simplest terms, spawn is like a carrier material. So it takes the mycelia or the mushroom from one particular place or one particular substance and transports it to another substance. The second substance here would be the culture with the substrate. So for this spawn preparation, they use the sorghum grain, and it was properly sterilized and of course processed because you cannot use the grains directly. So once it was processed, it was also mixed with nutrient supplements. These supplements were 2% gypsum and 10% wheat bran. And after that, it was inoculated with a piece of the mycelium from the original pure culture. After that, it was filled into sterilized 1 liter bottles and was again sterilized. It was filled into these bottles because this kind of arrangement allowed the mycelia to properly invade the spawn. And only if it fully invaded, only then it could be properly transported to the substrate. Right. So it was incubated again at 24 degrees, this time for 14 days, because there was more that the mycelia had to invade. And after that, the spawn was ready to use. So now the substrates also, they cannot be directly used. They also had to go through their own processing, and they had to be dried and sterilized. So they were after being sterilized, they were transferred to sterilized polythene bags because these bags were found to be most suitable for growth of the mycelia. And after this, the bags and the spawn that were in it were each inoculated with 80 grams of spawn. So to get proper results, they had so they had a total of 8 bags, and so each bag had 2 samples of the 4 substrates. Now, after this, once they were properly inoculated, holes were poked into the bags so that proper ventilation could also be provided. The next stage is not exactly a process, but it is something that I wanted to highlight because it is very, very, very important to the experiment, which is the cultivation conditions that were required. So once the spawn bags were, the holes were poked and they were properly ventilated, they were put in a dark room to initiate mycelial formation again. Okay. Now, why were they put in a dark room? Because as we all know, mushrooms need high amount of water and they have a very high moisture content. It is almost above 70%. So because of that, and they do not necessarily need sunlight. However, let's say we put the mushrooms out in the sun, then what could happen is that the sunlight could dry them up and they could lose that very important moisture content, and this will hamper mycelial growth. And because we are testing growth in different substrates, it would the researchers might make a mistake thinking that the growth was hampered because of the substrate and not because there was lack of moisture, right? So again, proper ventilation was also provided, and even though they were in a dark room and away from the sunlight, there was enough humidity and the temperature was also consistently and constantly monitored. So that's why the cultivation conditions are very important, because the entire study depends on the growth of the mushrooms.
Yes.
So after this, we'll be moving on to another important part of the study, which was they were finally analyzing their data. So I have summarized it into these 3 figures because it was easier to understand that way. So let's look at the first figure. So I'll just get a cursor. Yeah. So the first figure, basically, it's a graph that plots the amount of time it took on each substrate for 3 processes to take place. Number 1 was mycelial running, which is proper growth of the mycelium. After the mycelium fully grows, there is formation of the pinhead, which is the head of the mushroom. So once the mycelial running was done, they had to check the duration for pinhead formation. And third, they had to check duration for maturity of the fruiting bodies. So as you can see from this graph, it is visible that when cotton seed was used as a substrate, it took the least amount of time for all 3 processes. So I know from this one figure, it is easy to say that because the growth was fastest in the cotton seed, it is mostly most suitable for the growth of the mushroom. However, other factors do have to be taken into consideration. While performing any experiment, you don't take in only speed, which is why the other 2 tables have been included. So in the second table here, you can see 2 new terms, biological yield and economic yield. So it's very simple. Biological yield is the entire weight of the mushrooms, of the entire yield, the weight was measured. Whereas economic yield, the base of the stalk of the mushroom was cut off and then the weight was measured. Why? Because economic yield, the base of the stalk is not consumed. So because of that, economically, it doesn't have that much of a value, which is why, as you can see, in all four cases, the economic yield is lesser than the biological yield. So again, here, if you see, cottonseed had the most biological yield, which meant that it contributed to mycelial and pinhead density. And that is also good because there will be more nutrients packed into the parts of the mushroom. Now we move on to the third table. The third table talks about substrate dry weight and biological efficiency. So substrate dry weight, it's easy to understand. It's the weight of the substrate without any of the water content. So as you can see, cottonseed has the least amount of substrate dry weight. And biological efficiency, it's what the term says, it's how efficient is this substrate in producing a good yield of the mushroom. So it is measured by the ratio of the biological yield by the substrate dry weight. So naturally, it is highest in cottonseed. So from all these three, from all these three observations, they concluded that the cottonseed and then paper waste were the most suitable for the growth of this particular mushroom. There were reasons for that. And although they did say that cottonseed is more suitable, let's say there is some particular industry which does not have access to cottonseed, then the other two substrates can still be used. Like I mentioned, all four, they do contribute to the growth and they do contribute to the yield. It's just that this entire study was a comparison between the four substrates, and they found that cottonseed had most contribution, whereas sawdust had least. But even then, sawdust did contribute a little bit on its part. So now I'm moving on to my end slide. So the reason these four substrates were chosen is that if you see, all four substrates could be byproducts or by waste products of any other agricultural process. Sawdust from wood processing, cottonseed from cotton agriculture. We have wheat straw from, of course, wheat agriculture. Paper waste, I don't even have to explain. So all these four substrates, most substrates are waste like this, which means that using these substrates in mushroom cultivation contributes to ensuring that agriculture truly is a zero waste process. It is fine that all these substrates are biodegradable. We can just degrade them and turn them into compost. That is agreeable. But when using them in mushroom cultivation, there's an immediate use for them. And it's something that's greatly contributing to not only the nutritive value, but the yield and the weight of the mushroom as well. Like this one study, there are several others on several other species of mushrooms as well, which are edible, which can be used. And all these studies together, they do contribute to ensuring that zero waste idea and that zero waste process. However, even after this, further studies do need to be conducted, especially in places like Ethiopia, because there is not enough knowledge about it at all. I did not know much about it until I did this presentation as well. So basically, studies like this are important because it ensures that in the future, it can actually make agriculture fully zero waste through mushroom cultivation. With that, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
It was a good presentation, Manaswini. I appreciated the part you have presented and wonderfully explained. Many things were cleared, that what is the importance of substrate in mushroom cultivation and few other conditions as well. But it was a good part. Just one thing to add to it, Manaswini. Could you just explain, okay, you focused upon that. It was though in the research article that you have used the word cotton seeds, fine. And you have been talking about that there is a waste, agriculture waste, which can be minimized. Seeds, as far as I know, is actually an agriculture, a usable product, not a waste that is coming out. Just to add to it, how would you suggest, I mean, if the cotton waste is being generated from the spinning mills or from farms, क्योंकि cotton की balls ही ली जाती हैं. I mean, there are the other remains as well. The cotton from out of the flowers, they just pluck out the cotton balls and the remaining part is still associated with the plant. So could that part be used? Because I have worked on cotton and I know that those parts, they are just removed and destroyed. Fine.
Right.
And is it those parts, are they advantageous to have mushroom cultivation? I mean, this would be a new thing. Because the place
Yeah.
where I have worked, Manaswini, it was in Punjab Agriculture University, and
Okay.
those people, they were actually destroying the remains of the cotton plant. But definitely, if they come to know that okay, this can be used in mushroom cultivation, they are also practicing mushroom cultivation in the university itself. So,
Okay.
I mean, we can suggest them. I can write a mail to the concerned person I know who is working upon this cotton in Punjab Agriculture University. What is your view about it?
Sir, so the reason cotton worked so well was because the entire plant has a faster decomposition rate than the other substrates. So because of that, whatever complex nutrients are within the plant and can be used by the mushrooms, they are broken down faster and can be easily utilized. So if that is the case for the cotton seed, then I'm sure it is there for the rest of the plant as well, because what really matters is the protein content and the decomposition rate, both of which are very, very high in especially cotton. And that's why they proved and they saw that it was most beneficial. So I personally believe that it can definitely be used.
Can I ask you a question out of this this part? I know that cotton is highly infested with the virus. This thing came to my mind, but I just want to know out of your inquisitiveness that cotton is highly infected with the Bigomo virus, and these viruses, they are able to go in through the fungus. So, is there any chance that maybe they are going into the fungus and may affect the fungal growth, the mushroom growth?
Sir, so as far as I know, especially with case of the Bigoma virus, what this is just what I learned. So I'm just shooting a guess here, is that now there are ways to treat the cotton or to even grow genetically modified cotton in a way that makes it resistant to the virus. So I don't think, of course, like I said, the substrates are properly sterilized and checked before they are added to the fungus. So I don't think they'll add a virus infected plant for the cultivation.
That is the part. The sterilization part may have killed the virus.
Yes.
But definitely, I mean, still, I know there are particles that may escape that mechanism and may have been suited to grow inside the fungus as well. But it won't affect much because clearly the results that you have mentioned, it clearly show that yes, how effective the cotton products or the cotton seed is. And if we talk about the substrate that you had given the presentation all about, it was a wonderful presentation. The presentation skills and the presentation, the way you have prepared the presentation, as well as Adhish presentation. The presentation was good. I mean, the way you have prepared, there are certain points that need to be taken care of when you make the presentation. That should be, the text part should be minimized and more of figurative part. If you need to add the text part, not more than 3 bullet points and not enlarge sentences. Okay, मतलब व्यूअर को ये ना लगे कि भाई मुझे पढ़ना पड़ रहा है, अगर मुझे प्रेजेंटेशन से ही पढ़ना है, why not I go for the paper then? But definitely it was a good presentation, Adhish and Manaswini. The session is open for questions now. I would request all of you to come out with your questions. I'll start with Adhish. Adhish to Manaswini.
Yes, sir. Sir, I actually had a question. Sir, can we grow mushroom on compost?
Definitely. I mean, if you have asked me the question, Manaswini, you have to come to the answer to complete it. But Adhish, definitely. I mean, the mushroom cultivation, when I started this part, I exemplified by taking up the compost. I
Yes.
exemplified that you can have the compost, but it's not very much processed, but you can have it pre-processed. So pre-processed compost is, जब मैंने बताया था कि slants के ऊपर रख के उनको जो उनका
Yes, sir.
enriched material है, that can be used to grow mushrooms. Definitely, Adhish. But Manaswini, I would like you to add to it.
Okay, so yes, you can use compost, but the thing is, with fungus in general, they find it slightly difficult to uptake very complex nutrients. So you have to make sure that the compost is really fully processed and that the nutrients are in the simplest form possible, because otherwise they won't be able to take in the simple forms of the nutrients, because only the complex forms would be present, and that would definitely hamper the growth. So you can use composting, but it has to be very, very processed.
Yes, sir.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay, Adish. Athoiba? अथॉयबा देखो भाई मैं नाम बोलूंगा अगर किसी ने रिस्पॉन्ड नहीं करा नो अटेंडेंस विल बी अवॉर्डेड टू दैट सो अथॉयबा अगेन ही इज रिप्लाइंग इन द मैसेज आई एम नॉट हैप्पी विद सच काइंड ऑफ so Thoiba, you should turn on your mic and should talk. If there are network issues, you should get it fine. Every time it cannot be. I mean, I don't know how you are attending the classes then. Ayushi?
No, sir, I don't have any question.
Fine. Sam? Sam?
Even I don't have any questions. It was well explained.
Even I don't have. You should have. Devanshi?
Sir, no questions.
Ishita? Ishita? Janvi?
No questions, sir.
We have a question from Shakti. Shakti?
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, you are clearly audible.
No, sir, no questions. Sorry,
Ishita,
sir.
Shakti, come out with your question.
Yes, sir. So, sir, just few minutes ago, you said that fungal, if it absorbs fungal like fungus, so it won't affect much. So I didn't understood it clearly. Like
If it absorbs fungus, मैंने ये कहाँ बोला था?
Like sir,
Sir, I
you
think
said like
she's talking about virus taking up in
Okay.
fungus.
It would affect, yes, the mycoviruses, they are affecting the fungal growth as well. So mycoviruses is a problem actually. So these, I mean, there have been reports now that, Shakti, am I audible?
yes, sir.
So these mycoviruses, I mean the viruses which can grow in fungus, there have been many reports that the viruses that grow inside the plants can grow in the fungus as well, those who are infecting the plants. So my question to Manaswini was that, okay, if the virus gets transmitted from the composting material, from the substrate material to the fungus, would it affect the mushroom biology? I mean, the mushroom would able to grow normally, or would there be any problem? So I just wanted, I mean, this question came out of just of the my inquisitiveness, so I put up to Manaswini. So I believe that there can be problem. Shakti, there can be some problem. Adhish?
Yes, sir. Sir, are there any known cases of this kind of mushrooms acting as vectors for virus?
No, not exactly. No. But definitely there can be. Fungus?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the virus which I have been working upon, Adhish, is apple stem grooving virus. There have been reports that this virus get transmitted by Pteromyces. It's a fungal species, and it was a very new report. So that fungus has actually been able to infect the apple plants, apple trees, and if it is getting transmitted, it would be a big thing. But there have been reports that this is getting transmitted from the plant to the fungus. अब फंगस दूसरे पेड़ पे जा रही है, उसके स्पोर्स सेटल हो रहे हैं. There have been no study as of now. This paper, one of the finding got published in PNAS, Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences in USA, which report about the viroid transmission, not the virus, viroid transmission through fungus. Atish.
Virus transmission. That would prove deadly to a crop, sir.
Yes, definitely it will. It's a big
Virus.
publication actually. PNAS में छापना बहुत बड़ी चीज है. So that was a good finding.
Yes.
Anybody else for the question? किसी और का सवाल है? नम्रता, नंदिनी, नेहल, रूपल, साहिबा, संजना, त्रिदेव, विवेक. युवराज, नीचे वाला कोई भी नहीं है जिसका कोई सवाल हो? युक्ता had a question. युक्ता?
No, sir, I said no question.
Fine, guys. It was a good presentation, Adhish. Maybe in the next, before we have a next presentation, you can add some pictures about your findings. This would be really a good thing if you can share it with
Okay,
among
sir.
all of us in order
Okay,
to
sir,
give
will do,
more
sir.
experience to. So, okay, just for the attendance, just turn on your cameras, Adhish. It's done for you, Athoiba. Ayushi.
Present, sir.
Sam.
Present.
Devanshi.
Present, sir.
Ishita.
Present, sir.
Janveer's done. Kshitij. Manaswini.
Present, sir.
Namrata.
Present, sir.
Nandini. Nehal.
Present, sir. Present, sir.
Sahiba.
Present, sir.
Sanjana.
Present, sir.
Shakti.
Present, sir.
संजना तुम्हारा कैमरा नहीं ऑन हुआ. शिवानी. तन्वी.
Present, sir.
Present, sir.
ओके. त्रिदेव ओके. तन्वी. विवेक. युक्ता.
Present, sir.
Vivek.
Present, sir.
Okay, Tanvi, fine. And Yuvraj.
Present, sir.
Fine, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we'll see you in the next class then.
Thank you, sir.